The first thing they noticed was her lips. Not pale, not purple, blue. Not metaphorical blue, not poetic blue. Blue like ink dropped into water. She was conscious. She was breathing. Her heart was beating. But her blood, it wasn't red. It was blue. And no one in that emergency room could explain why. What do you do when the most fundamental rule of human biology suddenly breaks? Because here's the rule. Human blood is red. Always red. Sometimes darker, sometimes brighter, but red. So when the nurse drew her blood and the vial filled with deep cobalt blue, the room went silent. This happened in 2018. A 25-year-old woman walked into a Rhode Island emergency room complaining of weakness and shortness of breath. Nothing dramatic, no trauma, no visible injuries, just fatigue. But when doctors checked her oxygen levels, they were low, dangerously low. And yet, she wasn't gasping, she wasn't collapsing. She was talking normally, smiling even. The numbers said she should be suffocating, but her body wasn't behaving like someone without oxygen. That was the first red flag, or maybe the first blue one.
Hold on. So she looks fine, but the machines are screaming? Because if my oxygen says I'm dying, but I'm out here texting and breathing like normal, something is not adding up. And blue blood, that's royalty, or aliens, not Tuesday night in Rhode Island.
Exactly. And that's why this case stunned physicians, because biology is predictable until it isn't. Let's ground ourselves. Blood is red because of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein in red blood cells that binds to oxygen. When oxygen attaches to hemoglobin, it reflects red light. That's why oxygenated blood is bright red. When oxygen leaves, it turns darker, but still red, always red. So if blood turns blue, either light is playing tricks or chemistry has changed. The doctors drew another vial, still blue. They tested the oxygen machine. It was working. They tested her lungs. They were clear. They tested her heart, normal, but the oxygen reading stayed low, around 67%. For reference, below 90% is concerning. Below 80% is dangerous. Below 70%, you expect confusion, distress, collapse. But she was calm. So now the doctors had two mysteries. One, why was her oxygen reading so low? Two, why did her blood look like it belonged in a fantasy novel?
Probability assessment initiated. If hemoglobin cannot properly bind oxygen, blood color will alter. Primary suspected condition, methemoglobinemia.
Methemoglobinemia. Say that slowly. Meta-hemoglobin-emia. It's rare, it's dangerous, and it explains everything. But before we go there, let's understand something terrifying. Your blood can carry oxygen, or it can fail to carry oxygen, and you won't always know. Inside your red blood cells, iron molecules bind oxygen. Iron is what makes blood red, but iron has to be in the right chemical state, specifically Fe2+. If it oxidizes to Fe3+, it can no longer bind oxygen effectively. When that happens, hemoglobin becomes methemoglobin, and methemoglobin does not carry oxygen well. It also changes color from red to chocolate brown, and under certain lighting, blue. When too much hemoglobin converts to methemoglobin, oxygen delivery drops. Skin turns blue, lips turn blue, blood darkens, and oxygen monitors become confused. Because pulse oximeters assume hemoglobin behaves normally. But in this case, it wasn't.
So her body wasn't lacking oxygen. It just couldn't use it properly.
Correct. Methemoglobin reduces oxygen delivery efficiency. At elevated levels, tissue hypoxia occurs. Symptoms may include fatigue, shortness of breath, cyanosis.
Cyanosis, that blue tint, the thing that made this entire ER freeze. The doctors ran a specialized blood test, oximetry. This test can measure abnormal hemoglobin types. Results came back. Methemoglobin level over 20%. Normal is under 1%. At 20%, skin turns blue. At 50%, confusion begins. At 70%, it can be fatal. She was sitting at a level high enough to turn her visibly blue, but not yet high enough to shut her down. They needed to act fast. And here's the twist. This wasn't genetic. This wasn't poisoning. This wasn't infection. It was something far more ordinary, something most people have used without thinking twice. And in Act 2, we uncover what it was. Her blood was blue. Her oxygen readings were low. Her methemoglobin levels were dangerously elevated. The doctors had identified the condition, methemoglobinemia. Now they needed the cause. Because here's something important. Methemoglobinemia doesn't just appear for no reason. Something triggers it. Sometimes it's genetic. Sometimes it's industrial chemical exposure. Sometimes it's contaminated water. But in this case, it was something far more ordinary. When a case doesn't make sense, doctors return to one question. What did you take? Medications, supplements, recent procedures, pain relievers, dental numbing agents. And that's when she remembered. Earlier that day, she had used a topical anesthetic, a benzocaine-based medication. Benzocaine. It's found in numbing sprays, dental gels, sore throat treatments, some teething products. It's legal, common, widely available. And in rare cases, it can oxidize hemoglobin, turning it into methemoglobin.
Wait, you mean something I can buy at a pharmacy can turn my blood blue? Not exotic venom, not secret government lab stuff. A regular numbing spray?
Yes, and here's the nuance. Most people can metabolize small amounts of oxidizing agents without issue. Your body has enzymes, like cytochrome B5 reductase, that convert methemoglobin back into functional hemoglobin. It's a self-repair system. But sometimes, the exposure overwhelms the system, or the person has reduced enzymatic capacity, or the dosage is higher than expected.
Benzocaine is an oxidizing agent. It converts ferrous iron, Fe2+, in hemoglobin to ferric iron, Fe3+. Ferric iron cannot bind oxygen efficiently. As ferric hemoglobin accumulates, oxygen delivery declines. Pulse oximeters display inaccurate readings because light absorption properties change. This creates diagnostic confusion.
Let's pause there, because this is where the mystery becomes dangerous. Pulse oximeters assume normal hemoglobin behavior. They calculate oxygen saturation based on light absorption. But methemoglobinemia absorbs light differently, which means the monitor lies. It says oxygen is low, but it doesn't explain why. That's why doctors initially suspected lung failure, cardiac dysfunction, pulmonary embolism. But all of those were ruled out. The real culprit was chemical, subtle, invisible. Once doctors suspected methemoglobinemia, treatment was immediate. There's an antidote, methylene blue. Ironically, a blue medication.
So, we're injecting blue to fix blue? Science has a sense of humor.
Methylene blue acts as an electron donor. It helps convert ferric iron, Fe3+, back to ferrous iron, Fe2+, restoring oxygen carrying capacity.
They administered the antidote intravenously, and within minutes, her blood color shifted from deep blue back to red. Her oxygen readings normalized. Her skin tone returned. The ER tension dissolved. Imagine this. You walk into a hospital tired, and you watch your own blood turn blue. Doctors whisper. Monitors beep. You Google. Nothing because you're scared to. And then you're told it was a numbing spray. There's something unsettling about that. Not because benzocaine is evil, but because it reminds us the line between normal and emergency can be thin.
This is the part people don't talk about. We trust everyday products. We assume common equals safe. But common just means common. It doesn't mean impossible.
Exactly. This case wasn't about fear. It was about awareness. Because methemoglobinemia is rare, but not mythical. And now we arrive at a deeper question. If oxygen delivery can silently fail, what else in the body looks normal until it isn't? Her blood turned blue, but oxygen is invisible. We never see oxygen. We only see what happens when it leaves. And that's where this mystery gets deeper. Because the human body does something strange with color. It lies to us in subtle ways, all the time. Let's start with something most people believe. Blood in your veins is blue. It isn't, ever. Not in arteries, not in veins, not in space, not underwater. Blood is always some shade of red. So why do veins look blue under your skin? It's physics. Light enters your skin. Red wavelengths penetrate deeper. Blue wavelengths scatter back to your eyes. Your brain interprets scattered light as blue. So your veins look blue, but the blood inside them is dark red. Not cobalt, not navy, not royal. Red, always red, until chemistry interferes.
So basically, my body has been gaslighting me visually my whole life.
Your eyes are translators, not truth tellers. When oxygen levels fall, your body compensates. Heart rate increases. Breathing deepens. Blood vessels constrict or dilate. But when hemoglobin cannot carry oxygen properly, compensation has limits. That's when cyanosis appears. Blue lips, blue fingertips, blue nail beds. Not because blood is blue, but because oxygen saturation is critically altered. And here's what makes this chilling. Cyanosis doesn't mean no oxygen. It means not enough oxygen delivered efficiently. It's a transport failure, not a supply failure.
Oxygen delivery depends on 3 variables. 1. Hemoglobin concentration. 2. Oxygen saturation. 3. Cardiac output. If hemoglobin is structurally compromised, oxygen cannot bind efficiently. Methemoglobinemia disrupts binding at the molecular level. It is not suffocation, it is biochemical inefficiency.
That line matters. It wasn't that her lungs failed. It wasn't that she stopped breathing. It was that oxygen couldn't ride the train. The train tracks were intact. The train cars were damaged.
That's terrifyingly specific.
Most healthy adults can tolerate small increases in methemoglobin, but certain groups are more vulnerable. Infants under 6 months, people with enzyme deficiencies, individuals with heart or lung disease, those exposed to high doses of oxidizing agents. Infants are especially at risk. Their enzymatic systems are immature, which means something that mildly affects an adult can severely affect a baby. That's why certain teething gels were pulled from shelves years ago, because risk was low, but not zero. The FDA has issued warnings in the past about benzocaine in infants, because while rare, methemoglobinemia can escalate quickly. And here's something most people don't realize. It can look like anxiety, restlessness, rapid breathing, irritability, which means it can be misread.
So you could think you're having a panic attack when your hemoglobin is malfunctioning.
Yes! And that's why this case spread through medical journals. Because awareness prevents panic, and panic prevents clarity. Imagine seeing your own blood drawn and watching the color be wrong. Color is deeply tied to survival. Red means alive, warm, oxygenated. Blue is coded in our brains as cold, distant, deprived. So when doctors saw blue, their nervous systems reacted first. Science followed second. But once they understood the mechanism, the fear shifted into action. Because knowledge is oxygen too. And now we move into the final layer of this story. Not the emergency, not the chemistry, but the meaning. What does it teach us about fragility, about assumptions, about the invisible systems keeping us alive? The most dangerous failures are the quiet ones. Not explosions, not alarms, not dramatic collapses, but subtle shifts. A molecule changes form. An enzyme gets overwhelmed. A color shifts. And suddenly, the system you trusted isn't behaving normally. Her case ended well. But what makes this story powerful is not the rarity, it's the reminder. Oxygen is invisible, yet every second, your body is balancing it. Your brain begins suffering damage within minutes of oxygen deprivation. 3 minutes, 5 at most, that's the window before irreversible injury begins. And yet, you walk around daily never thinking about it, because hemoglobin works. Heart beats, lungs inflate, iron binds oxygen, release, repeat. About 20,000 breaths per day, all without your permission.
So basically we're alive because a microscopic handshake keeps happening?
Yes, a molecular agreement. Iron and oxygen. Bound, released, bound again. Life is chemistry in rhythm. And when rhythm breaks, color tells the story. Humans don't normally have blue blood, but some creatures do. The horseshoe crab, the octopus, the squid. Instead of iron, they use copper, and copper-based hemocyanin turns blue when oxygenated. Different metal, different color, same purpose, carry oxygen. In them, blue is normal. In us, blue is alarm. Color is contextual. Biology is specific, and deviation matters.
Biological systems maintain equilibrium through redundancy and correction mechanisms. Methemoglobinemia represents a temporary failure of correction. Correction restored stability. Outcome favorable.
Luma just called it temporary failure of correction, like we're talking about Wi-Fi.
Sometimes biology sounds cold until you remember. It's keeping you alive. This case went viral not because it was common, but because it was visual. Blue blood is cinematic. But here's the deeper truth. Your body has thousands of silent corrections happening daily. Free radicals forming, antioxidants neutralizing them, proteins misfolding, cells repairing them, DNA replicating, mistakes corrected. You are a constant negotiation. And most days, you win. Her story reminds us normal is not guaranteed. It is maintained. And maintenance requires awareness. Not paranoia, not fear. Awareness.
So what's the takeaway? Stop using numbing spray?
No. The takeaway is balance, risk assessment, understanding rarity, and respecting physiology. Because benzocaine is safe for most people. Methemoglobinemia is rare. Treatment is effective. This wasn't a horror story. It was a biology lesson. In a world obsessed with dramatic danger, sometimes the real power is understanding mechanisms. Fear thrives in mystery. Calm thrives in knowledge. And this case, it moved from panic to precision in under an hour. Because doctors recognized the pattern, tested properly, acted quickly, and restored equilibrium. That is science at its best. Her blood turned blue, and then it turned red again. That's the part we rush past. The return, the correction, the quiet miracle of chemistry restoring balance. Because the body did not fail, it faltered, and medicine nudged it back. There's something profoundly humbling about that. We talk about strength like it's dramatic, but most strength is subtle. It's enzymes converting molecules back to stability. It's iron shifting electrons. It's an IV drip delivering an antidote that donates electrons and resets the system. It's a team of doctors recognizing a rare pattern in time. Resilience is often microscopic.
I think what hits me most is how thin the line was. Like one molecule shift, and suddenly the room changes. But also, one molecule shift back, and everything stabilizes. That's not fragility, that's precision.
Exactly. Biology is precise. And that precision is what keeps you alive every second you don't notice. There are 3 lessons here. First, rare does not mean impossible. Second, visual shock does not equal catastrophe. And third, understanding removes panic. Her story could have spiraled into fear headlines. Woman's blood turns blue. Instead, it became a case study, a reminder that oxygen transport is chemistry. That chemistry can shift, and that shifts can be corrected.
Stability is not the absence of disruption. It is the presence of correction. Human physiology is dynamic equilibrium. Disruption occurred, correction followed. Outcome, restored homeostasis.
Even Luma is getting philosophical. You woke up today. Your heart beat roughly 100,000 times. Your lungs exchanged oxygen 20,000 times. Iron molecules bound and released oxygen billions of times. Without you asking, without you noticing. Her blood turning blue shocked an ER, but your blood turning red again every millisecond is the quiet miracle. So tonight, when you take a breath, remember, it's not automatic, it's orchestrated, and your body is very, very good at it.